Words for evil spirits: Jinn, Jardu, black magic, possession, some familiar, others less so. But all concepts that medical staff, psychiatrists and the criminal justice system are having to countenance. New research by Warwick University has highlighted the problem of some British Asians blaming the supernatural for mental health problems. The research coincides with the conviction of 4 members of the same family for the murder of a young woman whom they said was possessed. BBC Asian Network and Newsnight reporter Katrin Nye has spent 10 months exploring why exorcists are teaching serious illness and murder is explained away by the presence of evil spirits.
Mudasar Khan works for a lettings company in Walthamstow in East London. He's in charge of maintaining hundreds of properties. Mudasar works flexible hours because he suffers from panic attacks. He's been signed off work in the past and put on antidepressants.
When I'm working, I'm normally fine. It doesn't really affect me. If maybe the day before, the night before, I do feel that it's getting a little bit heavy, I wouldn't normally come in.
He claims medication hasn't worked for him. Instead, he says he's possessed by a jinn, a supernatural being.
You are burning. You are burning. Who's burning you? Who's burning you? It's not me. I am reading. Who's burning you? Who's burning you? Who's burning you? What I am reading? What I am reading? You don't believe what I'm reading, eh? What is your religion?
Treating him is Abou Mohammed, an exorcist who operates from the back room of his home in Ilford. Here he's summoning the jinn inside of Mudasar.
Did he come to you?
And speaks to it directly.
Is it you who caused him panic attack? Is it you who sent him to hospital? What you did?
Abou Mohammed is well known. He has a waiting list months long and charges £60 a session for his services. He claims to remove evil spirits from people who believe they're possessed by reading passages from the Koran.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen.
The exorcist knows what he does is somewhat controversial. While we're filming, he's constantly filming us, concerned we're going to distort what he's doing here.
Body feels battered. That's what it feels like. Even now I feel a bit drowsy. But it's just like if it's like slowly wearing off. You know, all that reading.
And you think you'll feel better now for having come here? For the rest of the week, or?
It will give me a boost. It will it's like a dose of medicine, isn't it?
There is a magic in this body.
Mudasar's views are not uncommon. Among British Asians in the UK, the belief in evil spirits is widespread. That can be concepts like black magic. At its more extreme, it's that the body can be possessed, causing physical harm. The concept of jinn is in the Koran, and so for British Muslims in particular, there's a theological grounding for their belief, though what jinn actually are is not universally agreed upon. Serving these communities are hundreds of spiritual healers across the UK, some charging thousands. In the course of making this film, I've heard evil spirits and jinns blamed for epilepsy, for bipolar disorder, for criminal activity, even for not getting a job. Now, these so-called healers can be harmless, even helpful to some. What's concerning academics is when they replace medical care for serious problems.
Jinns, they're very unpredictable. We don't know about jinns.
When 20-year-old Nadeem, whose name we've changed, became ill, he and his family thought he had a spiritual problem, that he was possessed by a jinn.
I came downstairs that night, right, and my dad goes, "What's up with you?" I go, "Look, I feel weird. These walls, they look weird. Everything just looks weird, and I can't take it."
A healer was brought in to try and remove the jinn that Nadeem felt was inside him. When he didn't recover, his family took him to hospital.
The psychiatrist come to me, he goes, "What's the matter?" He wasn't much aware about the jinns. I don't think they knew. So he was shell-shocked himself.
Nadeem is now diagnosed with schizophrenia and takes daily medication. Do you in any way regret not getting medical help sooner?
No. I'm actually happy that we did actually go through the spiritual help first.
When they become psychotic,
It's cases like Nadeem that cause concern for mental health professionals. That, like many, his illness was instantly attributed to possession. Professor Swaran Singh has just completed a 5-year study about this, funded by the Department of Health. Here he presents his results to a Sikh mental health conference in Birmingham.
The extreme case I can think of in the last few years is a Sikh gentleman who became ill when he was 18. But the family sought help within the community faith group, and he didn't come to psychiatric attention for 13 years. We saw him when he was 31. And by that time, a lot of damage is done. Any group of clinicians working in an inner city area, they will all have seen this. It's an everyday experience. And it's not necessarily a problem of social class or education.
So a lot of people?
It's a lot of people.
So don't do this to her, huh? Tell me what you have planned, what you have been doing.
Professor Singh says it's key his patients admit to their religious ceremonies or healing, because it can be helpful, as long as it's not an alternative to medical care. What has been found is that for some British Asians, it's simply more acceptable to be possessed than mentally ill.
To obey him only.
To obey him only.
So I think it's a combination of how cultures make sense for people and how stigma just prevents them from recognizing what it really is. Quite often, people see abnormal behavior as somehow being caused by some bad influence, rather than a sign of a mental illness. And that badness becomes an external malevolence, black magic by someone, a shadow, a jinn.
It's this kind of thinking that means courts are also now having to grapple with the concept of possession. This is Naila Mumtaz on her wedding day. Watching her is brother Nazir and family friend Tony. Just over a month ago, the man she's marrying, Mohammed Mumtaz, along with his parents, Zia al-Haq and Salma Aslam, and his brother-in-law, Hamad Hassan, were jailed for life for her murder. The trial heard evidence that Naila was killed as family members attempted to drive out an evil spirit. Again, they said she was possessed by a jinn.
Right. The thinking behind her in-laws was that they would basically have the body released somewhere or other, get the body released, take it back home to Pakistan. It would be very easy to explain away anything by basically having that capture all jinn did it.
The so-called healer that it's thought was in the room when Naila Mumtaz was murdered was never traced. Operating under the radar, they provide a tough task for prosecutors. Just over a month ago, in another case of assault in East London, a religious healer who beat a woman accused of possession with a stick was also never found. There have been two high-profile recent court cases, one in Birmingham, one in London. Both cases, the so-called healer, not traced, nowhere to be seen. Is that a failure?
It's a lack of understanding of how these people operate. They do operate in the shadows. They are protected by others within their communities or within their faiths or within their places of worship. They may leave the country. So it can be very difficult to track down the healer.
Would you say this is an increasing problem, a problem you're seeing more often?
We're becoming more aware of it. Whether it's increasing or not, I'm actually very pleased that we've been talking to lots of community groups over the last 3-4 years who want to tackle this themselves.
You make him sick. All the way from Pakistan, you come here. Who created you?
No one has accused Abou Mohammed of any wrongdoing, and many have told me they've benefited from his treatment. Although he says he can cure many illnesses, he also told me he's had clients he's had to pass on to doctors.
We don't want to interfere with the job of doctors or medical professionals. So everybody he does his job.
But you think that some of the problems that people might think are psychological are to do with the jinn?
Could be psychological problem but the one behind it is the jinn, because the jinn can play with us, can deceive us. The jinn can even deceive doctors.
Do you see that there's a difficult line there? That if someone believes in this, they might, not seek the right help.
If it's a fairy, how can I explain the things that I'm going through?
Here in East London, the Mental Health Trust told me their services were established to serve a community where religion was dying out. Now, most of their patients value the spiritual as much as they do science. It may be 2012, but this is an issue British institutions are struggling with today.